Welcome in to Locked On Phillies. In today's episode, do we have a young player turning into a power hitter right before our eyes? How did Aaron Nola look in his first spring action with a potential extension on the table? And a little bit of a fun topic about a no-name, a guy you don't know that's been making some waves early in spring training. It's time for Locked On Phillies.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I am your host, Connor Thomas. Been talking Phillies baseball for years, radio, TV, all that good stuff. You've heard my spiel before. Happy to be here with you as your host of Locked On Phillies. I want to thank you for making Locked On Phillies your first listen every day. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts, YouTube, Odyssey app, Spotify, Apple Music, all kinds of stuff. You can steal your friend's membership to whatever premium service they use and listen to it ad-free there. Pay for it yourself would be the preferable option. You can find the content almost anywhere here at Locked On Phillies. Appreciate you joining us for another episode. And today we're talking a little bit about the Philadelphia Phillies matchup with the Pittsburgh Pirates, and something that was a welcome sight to see for anybody who's been begging for Alec Bohm to figure out how to hit the ball out of the ballpark. He's a big dude. I'll tell you what. Alec Bohm is a large man. He plays a position that's known a little bit for power. Third basemen normally have a little bit of pop. When you look around the infield, the corner guys are the guys that have to range a little bit less, so naturally they're a little bit bigger, which means you'd expect them to have a little bit more power. So you look at that and you say, okay, all that adds up to Alec Bohm should be like a 25 home run guy, right? Well, his rookie year when he first came up and when he was in the National League Rookie of the Year race in that shortened 2020 season, the pandemic season, he looked like he could be that guy. And then he struggled in 2021. And then last year he was better as a hitter, much better as a hitter. But he still never really figured out the power to the level that some people would expect from his stature, his size, everything like that. He never really had the swing path that generated a lot of height and backspin and anything like that. And he hits the ball hard, but it's often line drives or ground balls and everything like that. So a lot of people have been wondering, does Alec Bohm have what it takes to become a guy that can hit the ball out of the ballpark consistently? Well, yesterday in the first inning of the Phillies spring training matchup with the Pittsburgh Pirates, he absolutely mashed a two-run home run, the second at bat of the game. Brandon Marsh took a walk. Good eye out of Marsh. Gets over there to first base. And then Alec Bohm deposits the ball into center field. Well, left center to be exact, but it wasn't even totally in the gap. It was more like straight away. It was like left of straightaway center. But you get what I'm saying. He hit the ball mile. It was a great swing. We've been hearing some interesting things about Alec Bohm out of Philadelphia Phillies spring training. Heard he's added like 15 pounds of muscle in the offseason. That's great. I'll tell you what. If you don't know this about me, I'm a credentialed member for the Philadelphia Phillies for media. And I was in the locker room last year for a good amount. I think I made it to like 50-some, 60-some games, sat in the press box and did all that good stuff, or was in the stands just as a casual observer. But tell you what, from the locker room, I'm not going to tell you everything that happens in the locker room, of course, because guys are getting ready for the game and changing, and it's a private space for these players. I will tell you what, Alec Bohm was the first time I saw these guys in the locker room. Alec Bohm was a guy that's out. The dude is absolutely shredded. Like, he has like an 8-pack. It's unbelievable. So, like, he's in great shape. A lot of people don't really consider baseball players as having athletic builds like that, because you see guys like Prince Fielder and Pablo Sandoval that you're like, well, they would never be able to play any other professional sport, but they can play baseball because you don't have to run that much. There are guys that are jacked. There are guys that are like shredded down. And Alec Bohm, it was surprising to me what type of shape he's in. So I know he's got the work ethic in the weight room, but it sounds like this offseason he really made a concerted effort to put on weight, which to me says, hey, I'm trying to get to drive the ball a little bit more. I'm trying to drive the baseball out of the yard. At a field like Citizens Bank Park, you have the opportunity to do that in droves because of the short fences all around the ballpark. It's very much a hitter's park. We know this. And Alec Bohm, if he can become that guy where he's a 25 home run guy, 30 home run guy, makes his team that much more dangerous. It's like what we were talking about with Brandon Marsh the other day, batting 280 down near the bottom of the lineup. Alec Bohm could be batting in the 7 spot, the 8 spot. If you can have a guy down there that's hitting the ball out of the yard that much, like that would be awesome. Remember, think about a stretch like Maikel Franco was on. Now, Alec Bohm and Maikel Franco, obviously not the same player. Alec Bohm is a better player than Maikel Franco. But Franco could hit the ball out of the yard. He could hit the ball a mile, and he did relatively consistently compared to what else he did well. If Alec Bohm can generate that type of power and have the average and continue to up his defense and everything like that, have the plus speed as well that Franco didn't have, well, you can look at a guy that's going to make a real impact for this team this year. And he made an impact last year, even without hitting the ball out of the ballpark. But it looks like he's starting to learn how to develop a swing path. And this is another Kevin Long thing. The more I watch this Phillies team in spring training, the more I say Kevin Long's fully deserving of the 3-year extension he got this offseason, being a great hitting coach for them, then he's a super important piece to the puzzle because these guys are making strides. I know it's only spring training, but in the little bit we've seen this year, you could see not vast improvements, but you could see like clear improvements or clear attempts at change from players that need to improve their offense. It makes me feel good about what Kevin Long's doing with these guys. And we saw Alec Bohm go ahead and hit a ball out of the yard yesterday that looks like a swing that we're not used to seeing from him. That would be really, really huge for the Philadelphia Phillies this year because you've already got a guy in Bryce Harper that if he played a full season, he'd be a 35 to 40 home run guy. You have a guy in Kyle Schwarber that's going to be a 35 to 40 home run guy. You have a guy in Rhys Hoskins that's going to be right around 30. You got a guy in JT Realmuto who's going to be right around 25. You got a guy in Nick Castellanos that'll probably give you 15 to 20. Who am I missing? Bryce Stott will probably leave the yard 10 to 15 times. Brandon Marsh will probably leave the yard around 10 times. Trey Turner, sorry, I haven't even mentioned Trey Turner, is going to hit more than 20 home runs this year. You look at that and the type of power you can generate with this lineup, and it's awesome. So if Alec Bohm can put himself in the upper echelon of Phillies hitters on this team as far as the ability to leave the yard, it makes them so much more dangerous. There's already no break in this lineup. If you take average guys and you start teaching them how to hit home runs at the major league level, or developing a swing where they're not trying to hit home runs, but the ball leaves the yard more, it adds to the versatility and the dangerousness of this Philadelphia Phillies lineup. We'll have to keep an eye on that for Alec Bohm, but that's one of the interesting storylines, position player-wise, in spring training, is can Alec Bohm really become this guy that we thought he was going to be when he first came up back in 2020, which is a third baseman that can hit for average, hit for power, field his position at an average level. That's all you need to ask, an average level, and be a big part of this team as an ancillary piece to the superstars. Well, what we saw yesterday from Alec Bohm says he's working on it, and he took his first step in the right direction. So that was a very, very encouraging sign for the Philadelphia Phillies, for Alec Bohm. I understand we're only 4 total games into the spring training schedule for the Philadelphia Phillies, but it's a good early indicator. This is just like what Brandon Marsh, what we were talking about. I know I already brought it up, but I'll say it again. This is just like what we were talking about with Brandon Marsh and the average and the smoother, quicker swing, like quieter mechanics. I'm not noticing anything too different mechanically from Alec Bohm. The way that you drive a baseball, though, it's kind of it seems backwards, right? Because you think you want to create lift. Though what you want to do is you want to create backspin. So chopping down on the ball and staying in the it's weird because you want a short swing, but you want the bat head to stay in the zone longer, which is what you get by hitting down on the ball and creating kind of what hitting coaches will tell you. It feels like chopping wood is kind of the motion you're looking for. It's what people liken it to when they're teaching a proper baseball swing. And it just seems like Alec Bohm's trying to keep the bat head through the zone longer, which creates that backspin and lift and can create more home runs. So, hey, all the questions we're having so far about the Philadelphia Phillies, will Nick Castellanos have a bounce back? Is Brandon Marsh going to be a plus hitter offensively? Is Alec Bohm going to create a little bit of power for the first time really in his career? Yeah, these are being answered right away. Now, they got to be consistently good, but it's all good news down there in Clearwater. Phillies win the game again yesterday against the Pittsburgh Pirates. So, great news for the Philadelphia Phillies on basically all fronts. Coming up, we're going to switch it to the defensive side of the ball, or I guess the fielding side, whatever you want to call it in baseball. I always struggle with what to call that. We're going to talk about Aaron Nola, who is up for an extension this year because he's in a contract year. I know He wants to get work done on that prior to the season starting. Doesn't want to discuss contract talks during the season. I know the Phillies, after locking up Sir Anthony Dominguez and Jose Alvarado, their priority has got to be looking at Aaron Nola and figuring out a way to get an extension done. We'll see how that happens, if and when that happens. But we'll talk about Aaron Nola and how he looked in his first spring action yesterday, and what to look forward to him, what to look forward to from him in the 2023 season. Well, we'll talk about that coming up next here on Locked On Phillies. First, though, I want to tell you about my friends over at Built Bar. You know about Built Bar. The great tasting protein bar. Tastes like a candy bar, works like a protein bar. It's absolutely awesome for you. This is the time of year where you're trying to get yourself in as good a shape as possible for those summer months where you're going to be wearing the T-shirts, going down the beach, taking the shirt off. You want to look good at the beach. You want to be in as good shape as possible so you can enjoy the summer. And Built Bar can help you with that. Some of the great flavors they have, chocolate chip cookie dough, churro, peanut butter, like all these great flavors that you think, oh, okay, I've heard those before, but normally when I have them in a protein bar, well, they taste like chalk. No, this is 100% real chocolate, not chalk, chocolate, 100% real on every Built Bar. They got the Built Bar Puffs that have marshmallow infused in them, and only 130 calories in each Built Bar, 17 grams of protein, only 4 grams of sugar. You can't beat those numbers. Go ahead and check out Walmart. They've got them in the pharmacy section. Sam's Club, got them in bulk if you want to get a 13-bar box, so you don't have to wait for them to be delivered online anymore like you used to. Trust me, I can't tell you enough good things about Built Bar. Go ahead and try them for yourself. You can see exactly what I'm talking about. All right, let's talk a little bit about Aaron Nola's first performance of spring training. Went 2 innings pitched against the Pittsburgh Pirates. Well, part of the Pittsburgh Pirates. He looked all right. Yeah, I mean, his final stat line, let me just pull this up for you so we have it exactly. Final stat line for Aaron Nola was 2 innings pitched, no hits allowed, no runs allowed, no earned runs allowed, 1 walk, 1 strikeout. Just a very calm, easy performance for Aaron Nola. Technically listed as the win here because they don't have the typical win stats if you have to go so many innings to get credited with a win in spring training. So he gets credited with the W there. But he worked the zone. The movement looked good. The pitch clock handling, I know he's a guy that takes a lot of time in between his deliveries. Well, he was looking pretty darn good as far as being on time. I know it'll be an adjustment for him. I like that he had the 1 walk mixed in there so he could go from the stretch a little bit and get used to that, because one of the things he needs to work on is his ability with runners on base. He's not as comfortable, it seems, with runners on base as he is when he's just going straight from the windup, but he handled it very well. He looked sharp. And we saw from Nick Nelson. Now, I know Nick Nelson and Aaron Nola, that's not exactly an equal comparison, but Nick Nelson in the first start of the spring for the Phillies, he was mechanically was fine, but his location, like his accuracy, was not great. So that happens with pitchers their first time out on the mound. Nola looked ready to go. He looked good. He looked like a guy who was top 5 in Cy Young voting last year. And that's a performance that can talk to the Philadelphia Phillies and say, hey, look, I'm ready to go. I'm going to put the work in. I'm going to have a great season. You better pay me now, because every start that I have in the regular season that goes like that, the price goes up. Obviously, it's more innings that he'd have to throw. He's not going to throw 2 innings in a good regular season start. You're looking for 6 or 7, maybe 8 out of Aaron Nola once he hits his stride in the regular season. But I don't know what more you need to see from Aaron Nola. If you're a fan, if you're the Phillies, if you're anybody, a casual baseball observer, just to observe a fan of another team in baseball, it says the Phillies should be looking to lock this guy up. And it sounds like they are. Just got to figure out the how much he's worth part, which is the hardest part of every contract discussion. But Nola came out looking good. He's a guy that also had his career high in number of innings thrown last year with a long season and a long, deep playoff run to the World Series. So he looked healthy. He looked ready. The velocity was good. Again, the movement was great on the off-speed stuff. Changeup was really working yesterday. So encouraging things from Aaron Nola. And that's all. Spring training there's a way to look at it like this, right? So I'm going to draw good news out of it because I like to take little victories. And every time I'm going to clarify it by saying this doesn't mean that like Aaron Nola is going to be the Cy Young this year because he threw 2 scoreless innings against the Pirates split squad in Clearwater in February. No, that's not what I'm saying. But a lot of people look at spring training as there's not really good news to come out of spring training. There's only possibly bad news. Hey, this guy looks like he doesn't have his stuff together. This guy It looks like he lost some velocity. This guy's got soreness here, there, the other thing. And good news is basically no news. Normally it's the other way around. No news is good news. But in spring training, a lot of people view good news as not relevant because you're not really playing major leaguers the whole time. I'm still going to try and take some small positives out of it. And yesterday was a small positive for Aaron Nola. Tell you who else yesterday was a small positive for too. And this is something I want to get a little bit deeper into in a later episode. Maybe I'll get into it tomorrow's episode, but Edmundo Sosa hit a ball out of the damn stadium against the Pittsburgh Pirates. They weren't in Clearwater. They were away at the Pirates stadium, spring training stadium, I should say. And they have like this awning, sort of like Dodger Stadium. You know how Dodger Stadium has like the roofing out at the back of the bleachers. It's not as big as Dodger Stadium, but they had that roofing, and he hit it onto that roofing, and it rolled off out of the stadium. Like, he absolutely nuked one. Andrew McCutchen, now a member of the Pittsburgh Pirates, previously a member of the Philadelphia Phillies, and previously before that, a MVP with the Pittsburgh Pirates. He was mic'd up when when Edmundo Sosa hit that home run on the broadcast. And he was being funny, saying, "Oh, I think in regular season that's just a routine pop fly. I think the wind really took that one," which is obviously a joke because Sosa hit it. Let me see if I can get the actual number on how far he hit it. 414 feet. That is what we in the business call a bomb, ladies and gentlemen. And I think about the year Edmundo Sosa had last year, and the more I see of him, I see a guy that was cast off from the Cardinals organization. The Phillies were able to get him here, and he might be. I'll have to think through this a little bit more, but I'm gonna make the statement now. Edmundo Sosa could very well be the most underrated player on this Philadelphia Phillies team. I know he's your fifth infielder, and he's blocked from starting by guys like Trey Turner and Bryson Stott and Alec Bohm and Rhys Hoskins. Not that he played first base anyway, but I can also see why the organization is trying him out at center field and trying to teach him the outfield position, because any way this guy can get in the lineup, it looks like he's a plus offensively, and maybe a much bigger plus than we initially considered him to be, because when he first came here, what we heard was, oh, he's a really good defensive shortstop or second baseman or wherever you want to play him in the middle infield. He was playing second base yesterday in that game. He's a versatile defender. Everything I see of his offense makes me more encouraged each time I watch him have an at-bat. So, yeah, maybe Edmundo Sosa is a bigger part of this puzzle than we've given him credit for last year, this offseason, and even looking forward to 2023. So that's something that we'll have to keep an eye on, and I'll dive deeper into at some point in a later podcast. But another fun day. The Phillies win the game. Final score of that one was 9-7. So they jumped out to an early 5-0 lead, and then the Pirates made a little bit of a comeback. But there was a point in the game where the Phillies were up 8-0, actually. Yeah, and then the Pirates scored a couple late against some minor league guys for the Philadelphia Phillies coming out of the pen. No problem there. The starters for the Phillies, they look as good as anybody I've watched play spring training baseball so far, and that is certainly a positive. But coming up, we're going to wrap up by talking about someone who's not a starter for the Phillies. Probably won't make the team. And much like Edmundo Sosa, I'm like, I got to look deeper into this guy and what he is. Because there is a name that you may not know, and you definitely didn't know before spring training, but you may know it now, at least in passing. But if he was on the street, maybe you wouldn't even recognize him. I'm going to talk to you about the spring training this guy has put together, who exactly he is, and what it means for the Philadelphia Phillies, if anything. We'll discuss coming up as we wrap up Locked On Phillies. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Weston Wilson. Yeah, if you don't know the name or you didn't know the name, maybe you do now, because he's torn it up through his first couple games of spring training. He's got 2 home runs. He homered again yesterday for the Phillies. He had a 2-run home run a couple days before, and he's got 5 RBIs, I believe, on the spring. Just very, very interesting player. Now, he's 27 years old, and he's never made it out of AAA. So normally that's a guy that's you're not looking at as a real legitimate prospect anymore. Initially drafted by the Brewers out of Clemson University, so he played down there in the ACC. Clemson's ACC, right? Yeah, he played in the ACC for his college ball. So he was a 3-year collegiate player. Played in the Cape Cod League, which is one of the top, if you're an East Coast guy, it's one of the top collegiate baseball leagues in the country when you're looking at summer leagues. So he was good in college, gets drafted, And then he ends up with the Philadelphia Phillies after spending last year in AAA Nashville with Milwaukee. What he did last year in 2022, I'll just run through the numbers for you real quick so you can get an idea of what this guy is. We've seen it in a very small sample size. But what is he over the course of an actual full season as a hitter? So he had 21 doubles, 11 home runs last year, 54 RBIs, and that's in a total of sorry, I got to make sure I've got this right. 118 games played. So you're looking at a situation where he's got a good amount of experience at the minor league level. Some of these numbers average-wise, 228 last year, 214 in the Arizona Fall League in 2021, 267. In AAA back in 2021 for his actual minor league work. I mean, the guy's a journeyman minor leaguer. He seems like he's a bit of a hitter. I don't think he's really gotten an opportunity to break into the majors, but he is at the AAA level, and he's going to be in Lehigh Valley. He's going to be one of those guys. I could see Weston Wilson being the Derek Hall of this year, in that you haven't really heard of him. You're not going to hear much of him. And then one point, maybe an opportunity shows up, plays right field, or plays corner outfield spots, I guess. We've talked about the depth of the outfield being questionable. Let's say that Dalton Guthrie's not getting it done if one of the guys goes down, or Jake Cave's not getting it done if one of the guys goes down, or maybe Weston Wilson's making a push to be one of those outfield depth pieces and maybe overtake Jake Cave or Dalton Guthrie when it comes to opportunities to be on the 26-man opening day roster. I'm not ready to put him there yet, but we'll see how it plays out. But it could be like gets called up for like a week, hits like 3 home runs, really pops on the scene, and then he kind of hang around for a little bit. I don't think he'll be a major contributor, even if he does see some type of call-up this year, or maybe he's one of the later season call-ups. But it's a nice story for him, and if he continues to hit, we're going to have to start having a conversation about, does Weston Wilson deserve to be in the majors at some point for the Philadelphia Phillies this year? Right now, a nice story, but a guy who's having a very, very good spring, and one that's making some noise down there in Clearwater. So keep an eye out, and we'll let you know everything that's going on there. That's all for today's Locked On Phillies. I want to thank you for making Locked On Phillies your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Now make your second listen Locked On MLB Prospects. Lindsey Crosby's great at what he does, talking about prospects like Weston Wilson and some bigger name ones. And go ahead and check out Lindsey's work wherever you get your podcast, YouTube, Odyssey app, Spotify, Apple Music, all that good stuff. So go ahead and check out that. Check out Locked On Phillies. Make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing. Subscribing is still important. I appreciate everyone who's already subscribed. Make a new account on YouTube. Subscribe in that way. I don't know if that's okay or not, so don't do that. But if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It takes a second. You get notifications when we get new content out here on Locked On Phillies. So go ahead and check that out. I appreciate you listening, and I will talk to you next time on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.